There's a famous story about Galileo Galilei. After being forced by the church to renounce the idea that the earth moves around the sun, he supposedly whispered a single sentence, and yet it moves. Whether he actually said those words is lost to history. But perhaps that isn't what matters. The more interesting question is why the story survived. For centuries, people continued to tell it, not because it was proven true, but because it captured something deeper. The idea that truth does not disappear simply because those in power refuse to accept it. And few stories embody that idea better than Orb on the Movements of the Earth. Orb on the Movements of the Earth, Episode 1. The series takes place in the early 15th century in the fictional kingdom of P. At first glance, the story seems to belong to a boy named Rafal. He is only 12 years old, yet he has already earned admission to university. His teachers admire him. His classmates envy him. His future appears perfectly secure. But what makes Rafal unusual is not his intelligence. It is the way he thinks. To him, life is a matter of calculation. Emotions are unreliable. Dreams are dangerous. Reason is all that matters. If there is an easier path, choose it. If there is a safer option, take it. And if society rewards one field of study over another, then that is the field worth pursuing. For Rafal, that field is theology, not astronomy. Astronomy is merely a hobby, a curiosity, a fascination with the stars that he keeps carefully separated from his future. And in the world of Orb, that separation might be the difference between life and death. Because this is a time when ideas can kill. The accepted understanding of the universe is simple. Earth stands at the center of creation. The sun moves around it. The stars move around it. Everything revolves around humanity and the world God created. At least, that is what everyone is expected to believe. And when a belief becomes the foundation of power, questioning it becomes more than an intellectual exercise. It becomes a crime, a sin, an act of rebellion. The first person we see paying the price for such rebellion is an unnamed scholar. Dragged into a dark prison cell, he is interrogated by a man named Novak. What makes Novak terrifying is not his cruelty, it is his calmness. He does not shout, he does not threaten. He simply carries out his work as though torture were no different from writing a report or sweeping a floor. To Novak, truth is irrelevant. His job is obedience. The scholar, broken and bleeding, refuses to surrender. With what little strength remains, he declares, "You have no right to erase the truth." And in that moment, Orb reveals its central conflict. Not science versus religion, not intelligence versus ignorance, but truth versus authority. One asks what is real, the other asks what is permitted. The following day, Rafal receives a simple assignment. His professor asks him to escort a recently released scholar named Hubert. On the surface, Hubert appears defeated. After all, he spent years imprisoned for heresy. He signed a confession. He publicly abandoned his research. The church has won, or so it seems, because the moment Hubert begins speaking, it becomes clear that he has surrendered nothing. Unlike the polite academics Rafal is used to, Hubert has no interest in social games. When he notices Rafal forcing a smile, he immediately calls him out. That smile won't benefit you. The remark catches Rafal completely off guard. For perhaps the first time in his life, someone sees through him. Not his achievements, not his reputation. Him. As they continue talking, Hubert discovers Rafal's astronomical notes and immediately recognizes something extraordinary. Talent. The kind of talent that appears only a few times in a generation. That discovery leads him to reveal a dangerous secret. His confession was a lie. His research never stopped. And now he wants Rafal to help finish it. The invitation is absurd. This is a self-confessed heretic, a man willing to threaten murder to protect his secrets. The rational decision is obvious. Report him, inform the church, walk away. And that is exactly what Rafal plans to do. Yet when the appointed night arrives, he finds himself climbing a mountain to meet Hubert. Why? Even Rafal cannot fully explain it. Perhaps curiosity is stronger than fear. Or perhaps there are moments when something inside us recognizes the possibility of a greater truth. At the summit, the world falls silent. Above them stretches an ocean of stars. The same stars humanity has gazed upon for thousands of years. The same stars that inspired myths, religions, and entire civilizations. Hubert asks Rafal to draw the Ptolemaic model of a universe. The model everyone accepts. The model everyone is taught. The model everyone calls truth. Rafal sketches it easily. A maze of circles within circles. Movements stacked upon movements. An increasingly complicated attempt to explain the heavens. Then Hubert asks a strange question. Do you think it's beautiful? Rafal hesitates. No teacher has ever asked him that. Not whether it is useful, not whether it is correct, whether it is beautiful. After a moment, he answers honestly. No, it's too complicated. Hubert smiles, because that answer is exactly what he was waiting for. Then he presents an idea so dangerous that it could cost both of them their lives. What if the sun does not move? What if Earth is not the center? What if our world is merely another planet, traveling through space around the sun? Today, those questions seem ordinary. To us, they are elementary science. But in Rafal's world, they are revolutionary, because they do more than rearrange the heavens. They rearrange humanity's place within them. The stars above remain unchanged. The night remains silent. Nothing in the sky appears different. And yet something has begun to move. Not the earth, not the sun, but Rafal's mind. And once an idea begins to move, stopping it becomes far more difficult than anyone imagines. Orb on the Movements of the Earth, Episode 2. And now, I'm going to move the Earth. If the Earth truly moves, Hubert said, then reason and beauty become one. Rafal wasn't convinced. Standing atop the mountain that night, he challenged Hubert with the same arguments any scholar loyal to the church would have made. First, if the Earth is moving, why do we land in the same spot when we jump? Hubert said nothing. So Rafal continued, if God created humanity, shouldn't humanity's home occupy the most important place in creation? If Earth is not the center of the universe, then doesn't that undermine the entire order of the world? Then he delivered what he believed was his strongest argument. More importantly, you're risking your life for an idea that hasn't even been proven. Hubert looked up at the stars before answering. Precisely because my life is at stake, I choose to trust my intuition. Rafal frowned. The answer made no sense. It sounded less like a scholar and more like a dreamer. And what if you're wrong? Hubert thought for a moment. Then I'm wrong. That was all. No excuses. No elaborate defense. Just acceptance. Then he added something Rafal had never considered before. A wrong answer is not the same thing as a worthless one. That night, Rafal walked home with a strange sense of frustration. He hated the conversation. He hated Hubert's vague answers. He hated the way the man seemed so unconcerned with his own survival. But most of all, he hated the fact that he couldn't stop thinking about it. For years, Rafal's world had been built upon simple rules. Study hard, avoid trouble, choose the safest path, maximize the reward, minimize the risk. It was a philosophy that had never failed him. Yet now he had encountered someone who lived by an entirely different set of principles. Someone willing to sacrifice everything for an idea. On the way home, Rafal suddenly lost his footing. For a brief moment, the world seemed to spin around him. The mountains tilted, the horizon shifted, up became down, and a thought appeared. What if the world only seems to move because the observer is moving? It was a fleeting realization, but some ideas only need a single crack to enter the mind. That night, Rafal couldn't sleep. He began running calculations, rearranging assumptions, testing possibilities. At first, he intended to prove Hubert wrong, but every equation carried him further in the opposite direction. If Earth truly revolved around the sun, if the planets all followed the same underlying principles, then the universe became simpler, more elegant, more harmonious, as though countless disconnected pieces suddenly fit together into a single design. And that frightened him. Because if something is both beautiful and logical, what if it's true? The next time he met Hubert, he no longer wanted to argue. Instead, he asked a different question. Why are you willing to die for this? Why sacrifice everything for an idea that might not even be correct? Hubert's answer surprised him. Because I believe in God. To Hubert, studying the heavens was not an act of rebellion against God. It was the opposite. It was an attempt to understand the world God had created. He believed the universe was a masterpiece, and seeking truth was one way of appreciating its creator. We do not read God's intentions only in books. We read them in nature. Perhaps more than anything else, those words changed Rafal. Because until now, he had believed there were only two sides: faith or reason, religion or science. Hubert suggested something far more dangerous. What if the search for truth required both? Then, without warning, Hubert announced that this would be their final night together. He had found a way to continue his research alone. Rafal didn't understand the feeling rising within him. Perhaps it was disappointment, perhaps regret. Only days earlier, he had planned to report this man to the authorities. Now he didn't want their conversations to end. Before leaving, Hubert offered one final request: keep studying astronomy. At the time, Rafal didn't realize those words were a farewell. Disaster arrived sooner than anyone expected. Novak's investigation eventually led him straight to Rafal's home. Rafal tried to remain calm, but then the worst possible thing happened. His astronomical notes were discovered. In an instant, he understood what was about to be taken from him. His future, his education, his life, everything could vanish alongside those pieces of paper. Then a voice spoke from behind him. They belong to me. I hid them here. The boy knows nothing. Hubert stepped forward and accepted responsibility for everything. Rafal stood frozen. He could only watch. Before being taken away, Hubert quietly pressed a small pendant into Rafal's hand. Inside it was a key. Then he spoke a single word: farewell. His sentence was death by burning, and he accepted it with astonishing calm. Because long ago, he had already made his choice. He chose to look toward the sky, and he accepted whatever price came with that decision. A few days later, guided by clues hidden within the pendant and references to the constellation Orion, Rafal discovered a secret crevice in the mountains. Inside lay Hubert's life's work: research notes, observations, calculations, hypotheses describing a universe in motion. Beside them sat a large bag of gold and a letter. In that letter, Hubert admitted something remarkable. Perhaps all of this was wrong. Perhaps every page represented nothing more than a mistake. And preserving these documents might bring disaster upon whoever inherited them. Yet even so, he couldn't bring himself to destroy them. Instead, he left the decision to the next person. To Rafal, the logical choice seemed obvious. Burn everything. Take the gold. Lives safely. No more suffering. No more deaths. No more risk. Rafal built a fire. The flames rose. The pages began to curl. Ink darkened and disappeared, line by line, page by page, as if Hubert's entire life were turning into ash before his eyes. Then he remembered the mountain, the stars, the question, do you think it's beautiful? He remembered the man who smiled in the face of death. His hands trembled, and suddenly he threw himself into the flames. With his bare hands, he pulled the burning papers free. The heat scorched his skin. Smoke filled his lungs, but he refused to let them go. When the fire finally died, Rafal sat alone beneath the cold night sky. The surviving pages lay scattered around him. Above, countless stars continued to shine, unchanged, silent, watching. A few days later, Rafal attended his final lesson. He stood and thanked everyone, then wished them God's blessings. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until he spoke one final sentence: I will study astronomy. The room fell silent. Nobody understood what had just happened, because in that moment, the old Rafal ceased to exist. The boy who worshipped logic above all else was gone. For the first time, he admitted a difficult truth. I used to think the world was full of fools, and somehow, I've become the greatest fool among them. Of course, His adoptive father refused to accept the decision. After everything that had happened to Hubert, he couldn't understand why Rafal would abandon theology for astronomy. He demanded that Rafal take back his words. He even threatened to withhold his university approval. Rafal listened quietly, then smiled. "I understand. I won't study astronomy." His father sighed with relief. The argument was over. At least, that was what he believed. But inside, Rafal had already reached a different conclusion. He simply needed to lie. Perhaps this was the final lesson Hubert had left behind. If you wish to pursue the truth, you must first survive. If the direct path is closed, take a longer road. If today is impossible, wait for tomorrow. 1 year, 10 years, 30 years, however long it takes. So Rafal began to plan. He would enter university, continue researching, move carefully, quietly, patiently, and one day, somehow, he would prove the heliocentric theory. One day, without question, then a strange thought stopped him. His eyes drifted across the shelves lining the room, shelf after shelf filled with books about astronomy. And suddenly, something didn't make sense. If his father truly despised astronomy, why did he own so many books about it? The contradiction was impossible to ignore. And for the first time, Rafal began to wonder whether there were truths hidden much closer to home. Orb on the Movements of the Earth, Episode 3. I believe in the heliocentric theory. After Hubert's death, life appears to return to normal. Rafal destroys the remaining notes connected to the heliocentric theory. He removes every trace of Hubert he can find. Soon he will enter university, study theology, build a safe future. The dangerous chapter of his life is over. At least, that is what he tells himself. But ideas rarely die when we decide they should. One day, while walking through town, Rafal unexpectedly crosses paths with Novak, the church investigator, the man who hunted Hubert, the man who watched him burn. Almost immediately, Novak notices the pendant hanging around Rafal's neck. Hubert's pendant, a tiny object carrying far more weight than it appears. Suspicion flashes across Novak's face. He begins asking questions. Questions about Hubert, questions about astronomy, questions about the heliocentric theory. Inside, Rafal panics. Outside, he remains perfectly composed. He insists he knows nothing. The pendant, he explains, serves as a reminder of the dangers of heresy. When Novak demands that he swear before God, Rafal does not hesitate. "I believe in the model of the universe we have been taught." The answer is flawless, technically true, emotionally convincing, and impossible to disprove. For the first time, Novak leaves without evidence. But once Rafal reaches home and closes the door behind him, the mask finally slips. Only then does he allow himself to breathe. Only then does he realize how close he came to sharing Hubert's fate. Then he notices something impossible. The calculations he thought he had burned are sitting on his desk. Not only that, someone has corrected them. Additional notes fill the margins. New observations appear between the lines. The work has continued without him. As he stares at the pages in disbelief, his adoptive father speaks from behind him. "When you burn something, make sure it burns completely." The remark sends a chill through the room. Was it him? Did he save the papers? Did he add the corrections? When Rafal asks directly, his father denies everything. Yet the denial feels strangely unconvincing. The mystery only deepens. More and more, Rafal begins to suspect that the people around him are carrying secrets of their own. Secrets buried beneath years of silence. Determined not to make another mistake, he decides to stop researching for a while, to become more cautious, to become more patient, to survive. But history rarely waits for people to feel ready. While Rafal is away, Novak arrives at his home. And during the conversation that follows, an unexpected truth emerges. Years ago, Rafal's adoptive father was Hubert's teacher. More importantly, he too had once been suspected of heresy. He too had studied the heliocentric theory. He too had looked into the same abyss, now staring back at Rafal. The difference is that he turned away. He abandoned the idea, dedicated himself to theology, spent years rebuilding his reputation, and eventually devoted his life to caring for orphan children. In many ways, he represents a possible future for Rafal, a life of compromise, a life of survival, a life built upon forgetting. Novak reminds him of that history. Then he begins describing the punishment awaiting heretics. What makes the conversation disturbing is not the violence, it is the casualness. Novak speaks as though discussing the weather, as though torture were merely another administrative procedure. He describes people burned alive, people clenching their jaws so tightly that their teeth shatter from the pain. Yet according to the beliefs of the age, physical suffering is not the true horror. The greater terror lies beyond death. If the body is reduced to ash, some believe the soul may lose its path forever. No rebirth, no continuation, no second chance, only oblivion, total annihilation. Whether Novak truly believes this hardly matters, because fear does not need to be true. It only needs to be effective. And throughout history, fear has often been the strongest ally of authority. Then Novak finally asks the question he came to ask. Your son is studying a heretical theory, isn't he? Rafal's father immediately denies it. Novak admits he has no proof. But from his perspective, Hubert's death changed nothing. Ideas do not die with people. Someone always inherits them, and the most likely heir is Rafal. He warns the old man that protecting a heretic will make him an accomplice, that hiding the truth will destroy both of them. And because Rafal is still young, confession might save his life. The message is unmistakable. Betray him now, or lose everything later. That night, Rafal asks his father one final time about the corrected notes. Again, he receives no answer. Instead, his father asks a different question. Do you really believe you can prove that the earth revolves around the sun? For a moment, everything becomes clear. This is not a conversation about astronomy. It is a conversation about conviction. Rafal answers without hesitation. Yes. His father lowers his head and makes the most painful decision of his life. The following morning, church officials arrive. Rafal is arrested. His own father has reported him. In the darkness of a prison cell, Novak presents a torture device known as the Pear of Anguish. He calmly explains how it works, how it tears flesh apart, how it leaves its victims unable to speak for months, and how it is merely one instrument among hundreds. Then he offers Rafal a choice. Publicly repent, abandon astronomy forever, reveal the hidden research, burn it with his own hands. In return, he can live. The offer surprises him. Could it really be that simple? Novak places a university admission document before him. A future, a career, a normal life. Then he offers a final piece of advice. The most important choice in life is knowing what to give up. After Novak leaves, Rafal repeats those words to himself. This isn't the end. Repenting isn't the end. Burning the documents isn't the end. Being forced to compromise isn't the end. Again and again, he tries to convince himself. Then another question emerges, a far more painful one. Why did he come this far in the first place? If he had never met Hubert, he would still be admired, still respected, still destined for greatness. His future would be bright. His life would be easy. So why give all of that away? Then he looks through the tiny prison window. The moonlight spills across the floor. The sky seems farther away than ever. Yet somehow, he sees it more clearly than before. And for the first time, he asks himself a strange question. Has the sky always been this beautiful? In that moment, Rafal finally understands. If he denies what he knows to be true, if he denies the beauty he has witnessed, then whatever life remains afterward will be built on a lie. The next day, he stands before the church tribunal. He admits everything. Yes, he studied the heliocentric theory. Yes, he knows it contradicts church doctrine. Again, they offer mercy. Again, they place the university document before him. The future he once dreamed of remains within reach. All he has to do is speak a few words. Just a few words. Rafal reaches out, takes the paper. For a moment, it seems he has chosen life. Then he tears it in half and declares before the entire court, I declare that I believe in the heliocentric theory. The room falls silent. His fate is sealed. Back in his cell, Novak visits him one final time. He brings wine, a small privilege for a prisoner facing execution. But what he truly wants is an answer. Why? Why throw everything away? Rafal invites him a drink, then answers simply, because as long as the research survives, the heliocentric theory can survive. Novak laughs. Under torture, he says, Rafal will eventually reveal everything. But Rafal remains calm. Your enemy is stronger than you think. According to him, the church is fighting the wrong enemy. The enemy is not a person, not a scholar, not even a group of heretics. The real enemy is what happens when imagination, curiosity, and knowledge come together. In other words, truth. Truth behaves like an infection. Once it spreads, even the person carrying it loses control. No institution can imprison it. No authority can fully destroy it. Novak asks whether Rafal truly believes this is the right choice. Rafal smiles. No, it is obviously the wrong choice. Then he recalls Hubert's words. A wrong answer is not the same thing as a meaningless one. And suddenly, Novak notices something strange. The wine. Rafal calmly explains that he has poisoned one of the cups. Novak's face turns pale. He desperately tries to force himself to vomit. Rafal watches quietly, then says, "Not yours. Mine." Novak stares at him in disbelief. "You're insane." Perhaps he is. After all, even Rafal admits he does not fully understand the truth he is dying for. Then he speaks the most important words of the episode. "You're right. But maybe you could call it love. Not love for a person. Not love for glory. Not love for recognition. But love for truth. Love for discovery. Love for understanding the world. Love for the sky he learned to see." That is what Novak never understands. Fear can control people, but it cannot always overcome love. Soon afterward, Rafal dies before the church can break him. His body is placed upon the pyre. The flames rise into the night. Above him, the stars continue their silent journey across the heavens. The same stars Hubert once looked at. The same stars Rafal chose over his future. His journey ends there, but the idea he inherited does not. Because this has never been the story of one boy, or one scholar, or one generation. It is the story of a truth moving through history, carried from one person to the next, like a flame passed from hand to hand. And unlike the bodies that carried it, that flame refuses to die.